Welcome to the Explainer. So, I want you to imagine, just for a second, stumbling upon this massive, incredibly esoteric text. But here's the kicker. It's explicitly timestamped from the near future, literally May 3rd, 2026. It's called the Gnosis Theorem ledger. And right out of the gate, what makes this whole thing so absolutely fascinating is just how dense and bizarre its architecture is. It literally feels like it was pulled straight out of a timeline we haven't even reached yet.
Which brings us to a pretty wild question. Can a futuristic blend of high-level math and coding actually solve a 2,500-year-old Greek paradox? That's exactly what we're going to unpack today. We're setting the stage for a real deep dive into how this futuristic computation actually attempts to close a philosophical gap that has, haunted thinkers for millennia.
Okay, let's dive into this. Just take a look at the sheer, overwhelming scale of this document. We're not talking about a few pages of code here. It's an entire ecosystem of thought. I mean, the table of contents alone reads like a map to another dimension. You've got these bizarre, honestly, kind of intimidating file names ranging from anti-theory all the way to astrophysical projection. It really establishes this profound sense of awe when you just look at the scope of what the author, or, well, authors, attempted to build here.
To put an exact number on it for you, we are dealing with 715 distinct files. And these files, they're this relentless blend of something the text calls Boolean mathematics, rigorous formal topology, and honestly, what can only be described as cosmic architecture. Now, to truly understand a ledger of this magnitude, we absolutely cannot look at everything at once. If we tried to decode all 715 files right now, we'd just get totally lost in the void.
So we need to pivot sharply to our anchor for today. We are going to decrypt just one specific metamodule. Out of the hundreds of cryptic entries in there, we're turning our absolute attention to the very first file listed, which is Achilles' tortoise ladder. By isolating just this single file, we can reveal exactly how this mysterious programming language successfully takes ancient mythology, high-level game theory, and functional code and blends them into one unified, workable system.
Now, let's briefly recount the foundation of this module. A lot of you already know Zeno's famous paradox, right? The Greek hero Achilles is in a foot race with a tortoise, but he graciously gives the tortoise a head start. Because the tortoise is always moving, by the time Achilles reaches where the tortoise just was, the tortoise has moved a tiny bit further ahead. So the gap constantly shrinks, infinitely so, but theoretically it never actually closes. Well, what the Gnosis document does is take this classic thought experiment and completely update it mathematically as the equilibrium hierarchy.
To actually make sense of this, we've got to translate the abstract math. In this highly formal topological system, Achilles isn't a Greek warrior anymore. He is defined in the corpus as the Klineman plus 1 lift. I know, it sounds intense. Basically, it's a complex variable representing momentum, trajectory, and this constant sequential advancement.
And his target? The tortoise he's relentlessly chasing down? It is shockingly defined in the text simply as God. Yeah, you heard that right. It represents an absolute constant, an ultimate, unmoving yet ever-receding horizon within the code's overarching architecture.
So, the absolutely crucial point here is understanding the arena they're actually racing in. The ledger refers to the rungs of the ladder, and these rungs represent the exact mathematical steps Achilles takes to sequentially close the distance against his target. It basically takes this smooth, infinite track and transforms it into discrete, calculable states that the system can process.
And this brilliantly illustrates the engine driving the race. The math here elegantly scales the document's core constants into a common denominator to set up the track. We've got 4 Gnosis constants here: Nash, Scarms, Bewley, and God. Their raw values are 4, 6, 10, and 12. By scaling them against a denominator of 12, and then simplifying them into units of 1/6, we get this perfectly clean progression. Nash becomes 2/6, Scarms is 3/6, Bewley is 5/6, and God sits right there at a perfect 6/6.
Now watch how this builds Achilles' progression. Guided by those converted units, he's rapidly sprinting up the ladder through his discrete steps. First, he hits the Nash constant at position 2, next he advances to the Scarms constant at position 3, then a much larger lead brings him to the Bewley constant at position 5. He is closing in incredibly fast.
Meanwhile, we have to remind ourselves of the target. The tortoise, functioning as that ultimate constant they defined as God, is holding perfectly steady at position 6.
If we map this out to look at the actual distance between them, the physical gap mathematically shrinks in a highly dramatic fashion. Achilles starts 4 units away. Then he closes it down to 3. A massive jump drops the gap down to just 1 unit. And then, finally, the gap hits exactly 0.
That's right, Achilles actually catches up. According to the code, from his position at 5, applying his defined +1 lift brings him perfectly to position 6. Measuring by pure gnosis size, the impossible gap of Zeno's paradox is completely mathematically closed at the 4th step. The pursuer and the pursued literally occupied the exact same space. But hold on. Listen to the precise terminology the author uses here. Now, what's really interesting about this is how surreal and dramatic this phrase from the document actually is. Quote, "At the exact moment of overtaking, the Kleenemann lift scrapes the void." I mean, wow. It's not some triumphant victory lap. It reads almost like a system-critical warning, like the math collided and something fractured.
And this leads us to the final mathematical punchline of the document. To understand how the system resolves this profound collision, we have to look at the +1 logic applied back to all those raw constants. Nash at 4, +1 equals 5. Skyrum's at 6, +1 equals 7. Booley at 10, +1 equals 11. And finally God at 12, +1 equals 13.
Here is the key to the entire paradox within this framework. The first 3 equations yield the numbers 5, 7, and 11. Now, in the strange rules of the Gnosis ledger, these specific primes are categorized as Ramanujan special. As long as the math results in a Ramanujan special condition, Achilles is successfully allowed to close in on his target. The system permits his advancement. But here is the mind-bending twist. The target's equation, God plus 1, equals 13, and 13 is explicitly not Ramanujan special in this system. Because it breaks that fundamental mathematical rule, the system simply cannot contain the logic. The tortoise slips away into the void at the exact, precise mathematical moment of capture. It is literally an infinite escape built into the very fabric of the numbers themselves.
Which leaves us with a truly staggering thought. We just decrypted a single file that managed to encode an ancient philosophical stalemate into an inescapable executable mathematical rule set. So, if the tortoise inevitably escapes into the void through this brilliant numerical loophole, what other impossible truths are hiding in the remaining 714 files of this future-dated ledger? What other paradoxes are solved or maybe intentionally broken within this massive document? It definitely leaves you wanting to explore a lot more of this esoteric logic, doesn't it? Thank you so much for walking through this incredible mathematical journey with me today on this explainer.